My beloved brothers and sisters, we often think that closeness to Allah is only for a special few. Those who can wake up every night, stand for long hours, and shed tears in Tahajjud. But what if I told you that Allah, in His infinite mercy, has opened doors for every single one of us, doors that many Muslims walk past every day simply because they do not know. Today's reminder is not to make you feel guilty, but to give you hope. Because Islam is not a religion that burdens you. It is a religion that lifts you. There are verses in the Qur'an so powerful, so full of mercy that many scholars have spoken about their immense reward, yet 99% of Muslims remain unaware of them. 2 ayahs, simple to recite, yet capable of transforming your nights, your faith, and your connection with Allah. So ask yourself this: if Allah gives you an opportunity to earn a reward similar to Tahajjud when you are weak, tired, or struggling, would you ignore it? Or would you grab it with both hands? Stay with me, because this reminder may change the way you see Allah's mercy forever. My beloved brothers and sisters, many of us carry a silent guilt in our hearts. We hear about Tahajjud. We listen to reminders about the night prayer. We are told that it is the prayer of the righteous, the habit of the prophets, the secret of those who are close to Allah, and deep down we feel the weight of not being able to wake up. Some of us try, we set alarms, we make intentions, but life overwhelms us. Exhaustion wins. Responsibilities pile up, sleep overtakes us, and slowly Shaitan whispers that closeness to Allah is not meant for people like us, but that whisper is a lie, a dangerous lie. Because Allah does not shut His doors when His servants struggle. Allah opens more doors when He sees sincerity mixed with weakness. Understand something very clearly. Allah knows who created you. He knows your body becomes tired. He knows your mind becomes overwhelmed. He knows your struggles better than you know them yourself. And that is why Islam is not a religion built only for the strongest worshippers, but for the weak, the broken, the busy, the struggling, the sinners who keep turning back. When Allah commands something great like Tahajjud, He also places within His book signs of mercy for those who wish but cannot always act. This is not about replacing obligation with laziness. This is about recognizing divine compassion. There are people who believe that if they miss Tahajjud, they have missed everything. They feel spiritually bankrupt. They feel distant. They feel as though Allah will not look at them with love. But Allah Himself teaches us through the Qur'an that reward is connected to intention, sincerity, and remembrance. There are ayahs that the tongue can recite in seconds, yet their weight is heavier than long hours of standing, because Allah placed immense value within them. These ayahs are not magic words, they are divine gifts. And the tragedy is not that people do not pray Tahajjud. The tragedy is that people do not know how merciful Allah truly is. When we talk about 2 ayahs that carry the reward of night worship, we are talking about Allah making His remembrance accessible. We are talking about a Lord who wants you to succeed, not fail. A Lord who wants you to return, not give up. A Lord who does not say, if you cannot do everything, then do nothing. But instead says, do what you can, and I will multiply it beyond your imagination. This is why knowledge is dangerous when absent. Because when Muslims do not know what Allah has placed in the Qur'an, they assume worship is only for a select few, and they unknowingly deprive themselves of oceans of reward. Look at how Allah speaks to us in the Qur'an. He does not say, you must exhaust yourselves to be worthy. He says, remember me and I will remember you. He does not say, stand until your legs break. He says, call upon me, I will respond. Tahajjud is powerful, yes, but remembrance is constant. Recitation is accessible. Mercy is vast. And when Allah places rewards similar to night prayer in simple acts, it is not to lower the value of Tahajjud, but to raise the hope of those who feel distant from it. Many people underestimate small deeds because they measure worship by effort, not by acceptance. But Allah does not measure the way humans measure. A single sincere tear can outweigh years of action. A few ayahs recited with presence can outweigh hours of heedless movement. That is why the companions were taught to never belittle any good deed, no matter how small it appears. Because what looks small to you may be enormous with Allah. There are Muslims who rush to sleep without remembering Allah. They scroll endlessly, they exhaust their eyes, and then they collapse into sleep without a single ayah, without a single moment of awareness that their soul is being taken temporarily. And there are Muslims who recite a few verses with consciousness, with humility, with hope, and they sleep while angels surround them, while mercy descends upon them, while reward is written for them as though they stood in prayer. The difference is not time. The difference is knowledge. Allah does not want you to despair. He does not want you to say, I am not good enough. He does not want you to disconnect. He wants you to cling to Him in every state. When you are strong, worship strongly. When you are weak, worship gently. When you are busy, worship briefly. But never abandon worship completely. Because the greatest loss is not missing tahajjud. The greatest loss is forgetting Allah altogether. These ayahs were not hidden. They were not secret. They were placed in the Qur'an that sits in our homes, on our phones, on our shelves. But because we do not reflect, because we do not learn, because we do not ask, we live deprived while thinking there is nothing more. And this is why reminders like this matter. Not to replace effort, but to revive hope. Not to cancel tahajjud, boo. To reconnect hearts that feel disconnected. Not to lower standards, but to lift broken souls. If Allah wanted worship to be impossible, He would not have made it easy to remember Him while lying down, while sitting, while walking, while resting. If Allah wanted reward only for the elite, He would not have attached it to simple remembrance. If Allah wanted to reject you because of your weakness, He would not have opened alternatives filled with mercy. And when you understand this, your relationship with Allah changes from fear-based exhaustion to love-based consistency. This is why learning about these ayahs matters. Not because they give you permission to abandon effort, but because they give you permission to hope. They remind you that Allah sees your struggle. They remind you that Allah rewards intention. They remind you that Allah never closes all doors at once. And when a servant realizes that Allah is not waiting to punish their weakness, but to reward their turning back, their heart softens, their worship improves, and their connection deepens, because they no longer worship out of guilt, but out of love, gratitude, and trust in a Lord whose mercy is far greater than their shortcomings. Me beloved brothers and sisters, it is truly painful to realize that sometimes the greatest treasures are the ones we walk past every single day. Not because they are hidden, not because they are complicated, but because we are unaware of their value. The Qur'an is in our homes, on our ones recited in our masajid, yet within it are ayahs whose reward and depth are known by very few. Among them are two verses that the majority of Muslims recite without realizing what Allah has placed inside them. And when something becomes routine, it often loses its meaning, its weight, and its power in our lives. These two ayahs are from the very end of Surah Al-Baqarah. Many people know them. Many people memorize them as children. Many people recite them before sleeping. But knowing the words is not the same as knowing the value. The Messenger of Allah spoke about these verses in a way that should shake the hearts of believers. Yet how often do we pause to reflect on that? How often do we recite them with awareness? How often do we understand what Allah is giving us through them? Allah granted these two ayahs as a special gift. They were not revealed in the same way as the rest of the Qur'an. They were given from above the 7 heavens. That alone should make a believer stop and think. When something comes directly from such an elevated place, it carries a weight beyond imagination. And when Allah's Messenger informs us that whoever recites these two ayahs at night, they will be sufficient for him, this is not a casual statement. This is divine assurance. Sufficiency in protection, sufficiency in reward, sufficiency in closeness, sufficiency in mercy. Many scholars have explained that part of this sufficiency includes the reward similar to standing in night prayer. Not because the ayahs replace effort, but because Allah attached immense reward to remembrance when the servant is preparing to rest, placing their soul in Allah's care. It is Allah telling you, if you could not stand, remember me before you sleep, and I will still give you. But the reason most Muslims overlook this power is because we live in a time where speed has replaced reflection. We recite fast, we move on quickly, we tick boxes instead of touching hearts. Another reason these ayahs are overlooked is because people assume that great reward must come from great physical effort. If something is easy, they think it cannot be valuable. If something is simple, they assume it must be minor. But Allah teaches us again and again that reward is not based on difficulty alone. It is based on sincerity, presence, and divine generosity. If Allah decides to give, no human logic can limit that gift. These ayahs are proof that Allah can place oceans inside a cup and mountains inside a single moment of remembrance. There is also a lack of teaching. Many Muslims are told what to recite, but not why they should recite it. They are told the words, but not the virtues. They are taught the actions, but not the wisdom. So the ayahs become cultural habits instead of conscious worship. A person recites them out of routine, without realizing that angels are surrounding them, that mercy is descending, that protection is being written, that reward is being multiplied beyond what they imagine. And when awareness is missing, appreciation disappears. Shaitan also plays a role. He does not always stop you from worship. Sometimes he allows you to worship without understanding, because worship without reflection has less impact on the heart. Shaitan is not threatened by moving lips. He is threatened by awake hearts. When a believer realizes that 2 ayahs can carry the reward of long night worship, Shaitan works harder to make those ayahs feel ordinary, rushed, or insignificant. Because if the believer understood their true value, they would never sleep without them. Another reason people overlook these ayahs is comparison. They compare themselves to those who wake up for tahajjud and feel inferior. They assume that since they cannot do what others do, there is no alternative for them. They do not realize that Allah does not deal with His servants through comparison, but through compassion. These ayahs are not meant to compete with tahajjud. They are meant to carry those who are trying but struggling. They are meant to keep hearts connected when bodies are tired. When Allah places such power in 2 ayahs, it is a message that He wants His servants close, a message that He wants remembrance to be constant, a message that He does not want anyone to feel locked out of His mercy. But most Muslims overlook this message because they read the Qur'an without asking Allah to open its meanings to them. They read it as text, not as conversation. They hear it as sound, not as guidance. If Muslims truly understood what Allah placed in these 2 ayahs, nights would change. Sleep would become an act of worship. Lying down would become an act of trust. Recitation would become an act of surrender. But when knowledge is missing, opportunity is missed. And when opportunity is missed repeatedly, hearts grow distant without realizing why. Allah did not place these ayahs at the end of the surah by accident. He placed them there as a closing gift, a gift of mercy, a gift of protection, a gift of reassurance, a gift that reminds the believer that Allah does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear. And yet, how many Muslims read that very line without realizing that Allah is speaking directly to their exhaustion, their weakness, their inability to always do more? These ayahs are overlooked not because they lack power, but because hearts are distracted. And the moment a believer pauses, reflects, and recites them with awareness, they realize that Allah was always giving more than they ever thought possible. And that what they assumed was small was, in reality, enormous beyond measure. My beloved brothers and sisters, one of the greatest tricks Shaitan plays on the believer is convincing them that if they cannot be perfect, they should not be consistent. He whispers that worship only counts when it is big, heavy, exhausting, and impressive. He makes people believe that unless they can wake up every night, pray long hours, and maintain a high level of action, their small efforts are meaningless. And because of this lie, many people abandon worship altogether, not realizing that Allah loves continuity far more than intensity that fades. Allah never asked you to be perfect. He asked you to keep returning. He never demanded that you do everything. He commanded you to do what you are able. This is why consistency holds such a high place in Islam. A deed done regularly, even if small, carries a weight that occasional bursts of action do not. Because consistency reflects sincerity. It shows that the heart is attached even when the body is weak. And Allah looks at hearts before He looks at limbs. Many people burn themselves out trying to reach a level they are not ready for. They push themselves harshly. They overload their routines. And then when they fail to maintain it, they collapse completely. This is not the path Allah wants for His servants. Islam is a religion of balance, a religion that understands human nature, a religion that acknowledges fluctuation. Even the companions were taught that faith rises and falls. What mattered was that they did not abandon remembrance when they were low. This is where simple acts, like reciting a few ayahs consistently, become more powerful than occasional long prayers. Because consistency keeps the connection alive. It keeps the heart warm. It keeps the door open. A person who recites these ayahs every night, even when tired, is silently telling Allah, I may be weak, but I have not forgotten you. And Allah never ignores a servant who remembers Him in weakness. Allah's mercy is such that He multiplies small deeds beyond imagination when they are done with love and regularity. A few moments of sincere remembrance before sleep, repeated every night, can outweigh long periods of worship done inconsistently. This is not human logic, this is divine generosity. Allah rewards not only the action, but the struggle to maintain it, the effort to show up, even when it feels small. People often underestimate consistency because it feels ordinary. There is no excitement in routine. There is no applause. There is no visible achievement. But in the unseen world, consistency builds mountains. Angels record it repeatedly. Mercy descends regularly. Protection surrounds the believer night after night. And slowly, without the person realizing, their heart becomes stronger, their faith deepens, and their love for Allah increases. When a believer understands this, they stop despising their small deeds. They stop comparing themselves to others. They stop feeling ashamed of what they can manage. Instead, they focus on what they can sustain. They realize that Allah would rather see them recite 2 ayahs every night for a lifetime than pray long hours once and abandon worship for months. Because what lasts is what transforms. Consistency also protects the believer from despair. When worship is part of daily life, even in small amounts, the heart never feels completely distant, even on bad days, even in moments of weakness, there is still a thread connecting the servant to Allah. And that thread is enough for Allah to pull the servant closer when the time is right. Many people think they need motivation to be consistent. In reality, consistency creates motivation. The more you maintain small acts, the more your heart desires more. A person who regularly recites these ayahs will eventually feel the sweetness of remembrance. That sweetness will lead them to add more. Perhaps one day they will wake up for tahajjud naturally, not out of pressure, but out of love. And it all begins with something small, simple, and steady. Allah did not make the path to Him steep and narrow. He made it wide and gradual, step by step, night by night, ayah by ayah. And those who understand the value of consistency stop chasing spiritual highs and start building spiritual roots. Roots that remain firm during exhaustion, hardship, and distraction. When you choose consistency over perfection, you choose sustainability over burnout. You choose mercy over guilt. You choose a relationship with Allah that grows instead of one that breaks. And Allah loves that servant who keeps knocking even softly rather than the one who knocks loudly once and never returns. This is why these ayahs matter so much. Not only because of their reward, but because they fit perfectly into a consistent routine. They are easy to maintain. They are accessible. They are gentle. And through them Allah teaches His Sa. Advance that staying connected is more important than doing the most, and that a heart that remembers Him regularly is never far from His mercy. Beloved brothers and sisters, when a believer truly understands Allah's mercy, their entire relationship with Him begins to change. Worship no longer feels like a heavy burden on the shoulders, but like a source of comfort for the heart. Instead of approaching Allah with constant fear of failure, the believer approaches Him with hope, trust, and love. And this shift is powerful because it transforms not only how we worship, but why we worship. When you realize that Allah has placed immense reward in simple acts, you stop seeing Him as a Lord who is waiting for you to slip, and you begin to see Him as a Lord who is waiting for you to turn back. You stop running away in shame and start coming closer with honesty. You no longer hide your weakness, you present it to Allah, knowing that His mercy is greater than your shortcomings. And this honesty creates a deeper, more sincere bond with Him. Knowing about these ayahs changes how you view your nights. Sleep is no longer an escape from worship, but a moment of surrender. You lie down knowing that you have remembered Allah, placed your soul in His care, and entrusted your worries to Him. This creates peace. A peace that no distraction can provide. A peace that comes from knowing that even in rest, you are connected to your Creator. It also changes how you view effort. You no longer feel crushed by what you cannot do. Instead, you feel grateful for what you are able to do. Gratitude replaces guilt. Hope replaces despair. And when hope fills the heart, worship becomes lighter, more meaningful, and more consistent. A believer who feels accepted will naturally strive to improve, while a believer who feels rejected will eventually give up. This understanding removes unhealthy comparison. You stop measuring your worship against others and start measuring it against your own sincerity. You realize that Allah deals with each servant individually. He knows your struggles, your schedule, your responsibilities, your mental state, and He does not expect from you what He expects from someone else. This realization brings relief, and relief opens the door to growth. Your dua also changes. Instead of asking Allah only for strength to do more, you begin asking Him for acceptance of what you do. You ask Him to place barakah in your small deeds. You ask Him to turn your weakness into a means of closeness rather than distance. And these are powerful du'as because they come from humility, not pride. When a believer understands this mercy, they stopped delaying repentance. They stopped thinking they need to become perfect before returning to Allah. They return as they are, tired, weak, struggling, and Allah loves that return because it is real, it is sincere, it is human. And Allah loves sincerity more than appearance. This knowledge also softens the heart toward others. When you see how gentle Allah is with you, you become gentle with people. You stop judging those who struggle. You stop looking down on those who cannot maintain high levels of worship. Instead, you encourage them with hope, just as Allah encourages you. You remind them that the door is open, not closed. Over time, this understanding builds trust. Trust that Allah sees you. Trust that Allah values your effort. Trust that Allah will never waste your sincerity. And when trust is present, worship becomes a conversation instead of a checklist. Remembrance becomes a refuge instead of a routine. And faith becomes something you live with, not something you carry as a burden. This is how knowing these ayahs changes your relationship with Allah. It moves you from pressure to peace, from fear to hope, from exhaustion to balance, from guilt to gratitude. And when a servant reaches this state, their heart becomes attached to Allah in a way that is deeper, calmer, and more lasting than any temporary spiritual high. Because in the end, closeness to Allah is not built only in long nights of standing, but in hearts that keep turning back to Him, trusting that His mercy is always greater than their weakness, and that every sincere step toward Him, no matter how small, is met with acceptance, love, and divine generosity beyond measure.